So, welcome once again to another episode of whatever this is.
Whatever this is. We'll just get into it. There's not a lot going on this week as far as just like releases go.
No, we got some more cerebral topics to talk about, some more emotional stuff.
Yeah, because like last week there wasn't like a big movie that came out or TV show, I don't think.
True. Yeah.
Nothing that was on our radar.
Although, this weekend, Blue Beetle comes out.
Really?
Yeah, so we'll talk about that next week.
I didn't notice due to none of the promotion. Weird.
All right, you shut up.
Yeah, today we're going to be talking about some really, interesting topics in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the first one is going to be, do you think the MCU shows are affecting the MCU movie quality?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah. So like all the TV shows, not like do they like tie into it, but more
Right.
are the movie qualities
On more
like,
of a meta level, on more of a texture level.
we're talking the Thors, the
financially,
Ant-Mans.
yeah.
Yeah. Are the reasons these are failing? Are they not as like good because of the shows?
I think the only answer that plausibly makes sense is, of course, with an asterisk,
Sure.
right? Like, the only two shows that directly tie into an existing movie, so that there's any kind of correlation that could be drawn yet until Brave New World comes out with
Sure.
Captain America later, are WandaVision, which feeds into Multiverse of Madness, and Loki, which feeds arguably into the Kang stuff from Quantumania.
Well, you could make an argument with Miss Marvel and the Marvels.
Yeah, but just like with
Brave New World?
with Brave New World, the Marvels isn't quite out yet.
Yeah, okay.
So
fair
you're
enough.
right. It will lead into that for sure.
Sure.
So in those cases, I think the relationship is actually kind of poetic, or at least nuanced and helpful. Whether or not you watched WandaVision, like it's not required reading to watch WandaVision, but it might make your experience arguably better or more interesting. And WandaVision is not a bad show on its own right.
No.
But there are other shows that have come out that don't connect to anything. And while that isn't necessarily a sin against the show, the number of shows that have come out and the disparate quality amongst these things, I do think it has an effect.
Okay.
We just saw Secret Invasion come out. We're
Yeah.
pretty lukewarm on Secret Invasion.
Right.
For some people, Moon Knight was a hit or miss. For some people, She-Hulk was a hit or miss. So, right now they've got arguably as many in the win column as they do in the fail column.
Right.
And that is going to just have a ripple effect on the movies because the movies are reaching that same equilibrium. We've got a lot of check marks on the win column, and now we're really just kind of posting losses over and over again. Sure, they make money, but they're critically not very well received.
Sure. So do you think like the MCU like had a basket and they kind of kept putting these eggs in the basket and then they kept kind of growing from there and now they have too many baskets that they're trying to put eggs in?
I think that's probably not untrue.
I mean, I don't think it's any secret that every MCU show has its own feel and makes it feel like its very own kind of thing. Miss Marvel feels a lot different from Moon Knight. She-Hulk feels different from WandaVision. So I think that they're trying to do that on purpose to make it feel like authentic to what the character is.
I just had a thought while you were describing that. That's because that's a very important point. For a long time, from like 2008 until the first Avengers film, they did that also. But because the landscape was so empty, they kind of got away with it. Thor didn't really feel like Captain America, which didn't really feel like Iron Man. But they still felt like they existed in a similar universe because the template they were trying to build towards was saying, let's borrow from the Ultimates. Let's borrow from a little bit more of a realistic approach to some of these things, science, indistinguishable from magic kind of stuff.
Right.
And that still made it feel like there was a kind of common denominator. Now, it sort of feels like Marvel MCU is approaching the sort of comic landscape of whatever you want to tell, storyline-wise, tell it.
Right.
Doesn't matter if it sort of borrows or feels similar to anything else because, we're just setting up new characters. And that level of discord starts to make things feel like they don't fit together. Like there's like it's a patchwork quilt now. It's kind of odd.
It's tough to say that like by looking at all the way back to Phase 1 as like a retrospective of like, okay, we're 10 years later, we get to see where it was.
That's true.
I'm sure 10 years from now we can see where Phase 4 is at and where it goes.
That's true.
But at the same time, Phase 4 had triple the amount of content that Phase 1 had, and I think that has a lot to say.
Yeah.
It also came out a lot triple the speed that
way
it came
faster
out.
way faster.
So I don't know, I think that does have a huge play into it.
Yeah.
I think having constant, and I mean constant Marvel content that you have to keep up with, whether it's a show or a movie, I think that also strains on the audience.
Yeah.
Most people call this superhero fatigue, something that is a legend at this point. But if everyone's talking about it, personally, I'd have to say it's probably a thing.
Yeah. There's a concept, though, of people trying to speak something into existence or a meme taking on a life of its own. That doesn't mean the meme is true.
Sure. It
just means that somebody managed to catch virality.
Right.
And it could be indicative of vocal minority. Now, I'm not saying that superhero fatigue isn't true.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that James Gunn himself has said that superhero fatigue may not be an accurate term for it. It could be that what people are really reacting to is just bad superhero movies.
Okay.
Because we've known for a long time now, especially even in the recent years, that good superhero movies can and do come out.
Oh yeah,
Guardians 3 was fantastic.
Yeah,
and
Across the Spider-Verse was great.
Exactly. So if you really pay attention and you do a good job, I don't know that superhero fatigue is necessarily the fullness that I would use to describe that.
Really?
I think if people see lazy movies, especially lazy superhero movies, or quick buck grabs or something like that, they're going to call that shit out. And rightfully so.
Okay.
Because if you're going to release a whole glut of content and a lot of it is very low quality, is there any expectation that we should like that stuff?
Sure. I see what you're saying. I would have to disagree and say there is superhero fatigue as a whole. And the reason is because I think superhero movies have affected the genre or just the stylistic choices of movies as a whole.
Okay.
So like, let's take the Godzilla franchises and see how they set up their universe. Super MCU-like, setting up the universe with Godzilla, a Godzilla sequel to build the world a little bit more. They have post-credit scenes. You have King Kong with a post-credit scene of it's going to connect to Godzilla. Of course, Kong versus Godzilla came out.
Yeah.
I think it was financially pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sure. My problem with that is they didn't feel like their own universe, more or less. It felt like a MCU branch of like the same kind of notes that you're taking off.
Sure.
With post-credit scenes. Like, yeah, I'm only watching Gods and Monsters of Godzilla because I want to see that post-credit scene.
Right.
So just kind of seeing like that formulaic approach to a franchise like that very much feels like, I guess, a superhero fatigue, because it just feels like a copy and paste of a movie, which you could say is lazy movie writing.
Yeah.
You could. But if every studio and every executive is trying to make a franchise like this, I would say it's probably fatigue overall.
So what I would say though is the very first Godzilla movie was made in 1950, and right after that they made a sequel to Godzilla, and then right after that was Godzilla versus Kong.
Sure. In
like 1962 or something like that.
Okay.
So this concept of Godzilla versus Kong is actually quite an antiquarian based concept.
Yeah.
Now, I do think you're hitting on a very important point though, which is back in those days when they were making these movies, whether or not they're indicative of the current practices of storylines, they certainly as a movie aren't crafted the same way they used to be. And that's, I think, more indicative of your point.
I believe so.
Back in the day, they didn't do things like mid-credit sequences or post-credit sequences or this like long trailer campaign or all these idiosyncratic, types of things that are indicative of the trappings of a superhero movie like you're describing.
Yeah.
But these concepts have existed for quite a long time as a sort of like meta conversation on just sort of storylines. I do think though that you're hitting a very like they feel like superhero movies because they're presented to us that way.
And I think
even if the storylines aren't quite the same thing.
Right. And I think people are fatigued from that type of storytelling, which I think is just like a good way to say superhero storytelling or superhero fatigue, because that's where it kind of came from, is from Marvel.
Yeah, that's true.
And everyone is trying to capitalize on that.
And it's not even necessarily you could say it's blockbuster fatigue, because I remember going to see like blockbusters and blockbusters didn't have that kind of thing. When the credits rolled on a blockbuster, people walked out of the goddamn theater.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't teasers. I mean, there was sometimes.
Maybe.
But they were mostly there for people who were like the hardcore fans, and they set up for a potential sequel with no guarantees that it would happen.
Yeah.
And no cinematic universe type stuff.
And it was more fun, and it wasn't for like, okay, I have to wait 2 hours for this 1 minute clip kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And it really just feels like that's a constant thing with these.
Yeah.
I did hear in the internets that an actor named Adam Levine.
Oh,
I'm sorry, not Adam Levine. Adam from Workaholics. I forget his last name.
Adam Levine, yeah.
Is it Levine? No,
that's
singer.
from Maroon 5.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Oopsie doopsie.
I don't remember.
Adam
something or other.
Yeah, so he was mostly saying he's a pretty prominent comedy actor.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying that comedies have been ruined by superhero movies, more or less.
Oh.
So I can kind of see where he's saying where like his whole kind of basis was who would go to the theater to see a $2 million budget comedy movie that doesn't have all the glit and glamour of a superhero movie and pay the same amount. And then you could instead go to a $200 million movie that has all the actors, has all the action, has all the special effects you want for the same price. That was kind of his kind of motto.
Well,
for
he's not necessarily wrong. I think he's a younger gentleman. I'm not going to say he's necessarily young. He's been in the game for a little while, but he's not like Scorsese or whatever. Like from on high looking down from the mountains saying, I proclaim this about movies or whatever. Or like a Tarantino. But he is still picking up on something that they would probably echo, which is for a while now. And even before Marvel movies were a glimmer in anybody's eye, for a while now, blockbusters have pretty harshly jockeyed for market share compared to other movies.
Sure.
I think, though, that what he's reacting to is superhero movies have exacerbated that issue.
Yeah.
But the pandemic taught us that we can watch movies plenty fine at home. Mm-hmm. And with the advent of streaming becoming way more common now, and the amount of content exclusive to streaming services now, people are spending their dollar at the movie theater much more judicially than they ever used to.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think that's difficult because of like how much content we are exposed to with streaming. It is also hard to find that it gets lost in the weeds.
Yeah.
When you say, oh yeah, this really funny movie premiere, I'm like, oh sweet, where's it on? They're like, oh, it's on Peacock. I'm like, okay.
I don't have that one.
Well, I mean, but that's how it is.
I get you.
It's on Stars. It's on
Yeah,
Peacock. It's on one of these weird ones. So it's tough.
If your average movie-going consumer, let's say, and this is probably way more than they watch, but let's say your average person watches one movie a week. I think that's still a cinephile, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But let's say for sake of argument, they watch one movie a week, and a blockbuster comes out roughly every other week. Or maybe even sometimes over the summer, every single week.
Yeah.
They're not going to watch all the other Tom, Dick, and Harry romantic comedies, or dramas that fill out the middle rung of movies.
Sure.
They're going to watch the ones that are Oscar bait, and they're going to watch the blockbusters because everyone else is going to talk about it and see it. And they want to be part of that conversation too.
Yeah.
So they're going to wait for things to happen on streaming. They're going to wait for things to be relegated to whatever service they're going to go to. And they may watch it, and they may not. And I don't think he's necessarily wrong. I think the circumstances are a little bit more conspiratorial than just Marvel movies.
Sure.
But I do think they've helped make the problem worse.
I think so too. I think that Marvel or just big budget superhero movies have taken the budget from those comedies.
Absolutely.
And it took
they're made for so much money now.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a huge problem that they're facing, especially right now when they're not making the money back because of how big the budget is and how big of a risk, which even plays into the fact of like how good the movie is, because then they can't be like, okay, let's take a risk with whatever we want to do in this movie, but we can't do that because that might upset some people.
Yeah.
And we can't make that much risk because that's $200 million we're about to lose.
Yeah.
So
well,
it's just
and
a huge gamble.
you've seen companies like Netflix or Hulu, which is owned by Disney, or Apple Plus or whatever.
Yeah.
They're starting to make those types of movies that at one point would have come out in the theater, and they're just releasing them in direct to streaming.
Right.
Now, whether or not they're found is an entirely non-elegant point, but
or they could just lie and say Burn Notice is. I'm sorry, not Burn Notice. What was that Rock and Ryan Reynolds movie with Gal Gadot?
Oh, Red Notice.
Red Notice.
Yeah.
Sorry, with Red Notice being like the biggest movie of the year and everyone's seen it and their grandmother.
Yeah.
But they say stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did you watch Red Notice?
I did.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't like it that much.
Okay. Do you just watch it once a week just to help that algorithm?
I mean, I got to do my part. Ryan Reynolds is a big fan of the podcast. I owe him, man.
That's a good point.
No, but like I think that the superhero movie is like any other major genre that showed up and dominated the landscape for a little while and then eventually shrinks back into its position. What I would think is happening now is we already crested the zenith of that wave, and we're starting to see that superhero movies can't really sustain this level of overt pressure they were putting on, people's wallets and pocketbooks, frankly, and the demand on their attention. Because while, yes, a lot of people like seeing, flashing lights and cool moments and great characters and that kind of thing, they also don't want to spend all their time doing that. They do want to see other movies that are fun, other things that are great. Yeah. So, with Marvel backing off on making DC movies, we'll sort of see how that works for them. But Westerns were huge for a while. That's true. And then eventually retreated. Horror movies were huge for a while and then eventually retreated. All these things eventually find wherever their natural equilibrium is.
Sure.
And I think we're seeing this sort of the tide recede on superhero movies. If so, maybe just a little bit, until they find their natural rhythm. What they can sustain.
I would like to think so too. I mean, based on what Disney's wanted to do of like pulling back on the shows more, focusing more on the movies. Personally, I think that's a good idea.
I think so too.
Mostly because for some reason they couldn't capture how long their shows wanted to be. I think that was a huge problem with being not too long, not too short, just awkward enough.
Yeah. I kind of blame Favreau's Mandalorian for that, though, to be perfectly honest.
But his show wasn't set up to be like that. It was episodic, more or less.
That's true.
At least the first season.
That's true. But like even early WandaVision, even Falcon the Winter Soldier, they had not necessarily a hyper consistent runtime, but they were generally within the ballpark of each other. There weren't episodes that were 58 minutes and episodes that were 32 minutes. You know what I mean? There wasn't this roller coaster.
Yeah, that's.
And then Mandalorian 2. I think specifically season 2 had episodes that were wildly, flagrantly different amounts of time. And you're like, what is happening?
Yeah, 30 minutes to 50 minutes to an hour. So it's a little strange.
Yeah.
Mandalorian season 2 did kind of put a big impact on that too.
I think so.
Yeah. Which is kind of fair.
So to this point then, if we're reaching superhero fatigue, if we're reaching too many Marvel properties, I can only posit that it's because we have too many popular characters to make stories about.
Yeah.
So here's my question to you.
Sure.
If you had to prune the branches over at Marvel and say, we're going to retire 3 characters, and this is probably a larger conversation, but for purposes of just kind of the opening shots here, which 3 characters would you say we're gonna put them through a retirement cycle?
Okay, so are we talking movies or are we talking comics?
I'm talking like the full character.
Full character.
Like they wouldn't make movies about this character for right now. They wouldn't make comics about this character for right now. They'd effectively pull a Death of Superman kind of a moment where the character is like full remission.
Full remission.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would do A-listers for sure.
Yeah, okay.
So the first one, which is probably, I mean, these are all hot takes in my opinion.
Sure.
But the reason is because they're so iconic, because they're so big, and because there's constant stories. It's like, oh, I gotta work on this character.
Right.
I've made it in my career.
Yeah.
So first one is Spider-Man.
Wow, coming right out of the gate.
Peter Parker.
Just dumpster him.
Dead.
Fuck.
Breaks his neck on the bridge kind of situation.
Oh, crap. Okay. So we're talking 616 Peter, right? 616 Peter's out.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And the reason is because, I mean, if we're talking about the comics in general, a lot of people don't like the Amazing run right now.
Yeah. Well, and it is pretty controversial.
Well, and I think it's because Peter's just stuck in the mud of just trying to get it out of this, but it's just spinning the wheels constantly of... always being in this, struggling, being this poor, struggling teenager, college student, maybe after.
Life is after me.
But just always after that. And there's nothing new and refreshing of the character. And it always has been like that. We will start new runs of Amazing Spider-Man, or we'll start new runs of Spider-Man, but always start at the status quo. And it always results in the status quo, whether it's a death, whether it's coming back to life, whether it's a superpower, whatever it is.
Character only goes so far before they go, wait, well, reel it back in.
Yeah.
Too far, Peter. Come on back.
But if you go to like the 80s Spider-Man, with the comics at least, it's like, oh, these are actually really good because things happened.
Yeah,
Gwen Stacy died.
Even 90s Spider-Man would do things like the Clone Saga or all kinds of like really big shakeups of the character. And they last for a long time.
And sure, like the Clone Saga didn't hit super well. It was mixed received, I think.
Sure.
But at the same time, there are fans of that. Yeah. Over time, they became fans of that. It becomes nostalgic, and it becomes like an interesting storyline.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'd say for the time being, Spider-Man has such a rogues gallery of villains, of other superheroes. We've proven that Miles Morales can like hold down the Spider-Man reigns.
Miles can be the main one,
yeah, he can. And I think like how do you have Miles grow if he's always going to be in Peter's shadow?
That's true.
And he's always like, Miles is going to be worse than Peter is because he's always going to be I'm the second Spider-Man. Oh, I'm the guy that has to prove myself. I have to be my own character. How long can he just continue to be his own before he is his own? You got to have him have time to shine.
Okay, so Punisher manages to... So we go back to the 70s. Punisher's introduction from being hired by the Jaguar to shoot Spider-Man. It works out. Spider-Man's done.
Oh, God.
Who's your next character?
After that, I'd say Batman.
Okay, so we're gonna hop in the pond. Over to DC.
Yeah, so I'm doing both right now.
Batman's out.
So
they've done that at least twice.
I know, but they never kept
if not
it.
3 times.
I know, and that's why I thought it was cool when Dick Grayson became... I mean, that's a tough one because Dick Grayson was already his own character.
Yeah.
And then they reverted him back.
But relegated him to Batman.
Yeah.
Although that Grant Morrison run with him and Damian was apparently pretty good.
It was, actually.
From what I understand.
I own it. It is very good.
Yeah.
But... I don't know. Like, why do we have this character of Damian Wayne?
Yeah.
How long are we going to have this character? Probably forever.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with him? Is he going to stay a kid? Is he going to stay...
It's kind of funny. All the Robins eventually grow up to reach the point of where Batman's age is,
Yeah.
kind of, or at least some shadow of it. But, like, Batman sort of stays the same age he's always been.
And just gets a younger Robin.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, yeah, now Tim
And the Robin ages up.
Well, yeah, Tim is just Red Robin now. He's doing his thing over there. Yeah. And it's the same thing. So, like... I love Batman, and he has great stories. And
sure.
But if you want to, like, continue the legacy, he can be, like, a legacy character of, like, okay, this is what we knew of him, and
sure,
we can continue from that.
So you're looking, you want a full-on Gotham Knights, the video game kind of storyline.
Well, maybe not that.
Batman's out.
Maybe not that exact one, but
sure.
to a regard of, hey, let's actually continue the mantle and see, like, what Batman inspired.
Right.
If I look at like what we're pitching right now from like a financial standpoint, it sounds awful because Spider-Man and Batman sell.
They do sell.
They're
do. Very popular characters.
They are popular.
With a lot of books.
Yes. And I could see the argument of like, oh yeah, like we need to create these stories for new character or for new audiences, for younger audiences who haven't experienced this. But we live in a different age now. We can subscribe to Marvel or DC for $7.99 a month.
True. So, but in the case of Spider-Man, you said that another character would take the baton from Peter, which is Miles.
Yeah.
In the case of Batman, would there be a Batman-shaped hole in the DC universe, and the other characters with their own identities would step in, or would you name a new Batman?
You could do either one to whatever effect that it works. Okay. You could easily do that. You could just create a new character and they could become Batman. Right. Or you could do the legacy thing of making Damian, like, actually, you know, slapping him around a bit, making him grow up, having that arc, or not having that arc and becoming Batman and then having that.
Yeah.
Or something. They set it up to that degree. I mean, it's called Batman and Son when he was introduced. What do you think that son's going to grow up to?
Yeah.
So I think, like, eventually you're going to have to pull the trigger.
Most of the times when they've done a Batman fatality or like they've sort of written him out of the program, they've brought in a new character to be Batman temporarily. Yeah. The exception of, but that new Batman, I mean, is like a little bit different. Like Azrael showed up to be Batman for a while after Nightfall when Bane broke his back, and Azrael was like wearing more and more complicated, more and more like vindictive and sort of, and then became more edgy, powerful armor. Exactly. By that, yeah. And then also at a point when Batman retired from being in Gotham for a while, Jim Gordon was wearing a Batman like mech suit for a little while. And these are all softball, like in like sort of meta parlance of how this stuff happens. Right. These are all softball pitches to launch new characters, right? Like this is the sort of reason why they do these types of things is they bring in a new character going, is this going to hit? Does anybody like this? We want to try to keep this around. No, doesn't work very well. All right, let's move that off. Right. Bring back the main guy. Business as usual. Yeah. Sometimes it works though, and we get characters, mostly Robins, that sort of continue past where they are. But a lot of times it doesn't hit very well. Yeah. In the case though of Superman, it kind of worked and it kind of didn't. So after Doomsday killed Superman, they brought in 4 new Supermen to be like, which one is the real Superman for a little while. And obviously quickly Steel was outed as being John Henry Irons and was a different character. The best of the 4, by the way. But like Eradicator was kind of whatever. And then Superboy was very cool and has become a character that sort of has lasted for quite a long time. Yeah. And Cyborg Superman, Hank Henshaw has sort of come and gone. but in different levels of interest or whatever. So it kind of worked and it kind of didn't at that point. With Batman, it most often doesn't work.
Yeah, no.
When they make a new character.
Right. And I don't know. I think Batman is a really cool character, but so is all of his, everyone surrounding Batman. I think that's one thing that makes him so cool.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne is such an interesting character, but how long is this going to go for?
Yeah.
Because I think eventually, the comic people that are still thriving in this industry are people like us.
Yeah.
I think the younger generation are getting into it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as strong as that we're into it at the moment. I still think we're buying the toy sales. I think we're getting the hot toys and the Lego sets and everything like that. So I think eventually some of us are getting kind of sick of okay, yeah, Miss Marvel died, but she's going to come back in a month and look at that.
Yeah, the yo-yoing of characters.
Yeah. And so it's not even no one, I'm pretty sure no one really cared when Miss Marvel died because they knew. They already knew.
Yeah, I don't think it was well handled at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if they ever want to get past this, they might have to just permanently pull a trigger like that. Permanently pulling a trigger to kill off a character like Uncle Ben or someone like that. Or Jean Grey for at least as long as they tried to.
Yeah, which was a while,
Yeah, I think it shows and it lasts for the character.
Okay, so you got 3 triggers, 3 barrels.
Yeah.
You already pulled 2 triggers. Who's the last one on the chopping board?
Do you have any in this race, or is it just me?
I do,
Okay.
but I want to hear your third one first.
Okay, I don't know. I was really debating.
So Batman, Tombstone, Peter Parker, Tombstone. Who's the next one?
I don't know. I was really debating if I wanted to pull one, but I'd probably say someone like Iron Man.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think the same reason why Iron Man was why it was such a big moment in Endgame that he died, because it did feel final-esque.
Yeah.
And I think Iron Man's comics has also gotten a little bit bigger since Iron Man's debut in
I think
MCU.
the movie certainly had a lot to do with that. Before Iron Man 2008, Tony's books were kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And he had his torchbearers for sure, but he was never like a mega blockbuster seller.
Right. And because of that, since the MCU, his character in the comics have changed as well.
Yeah.
And it really made it to the MCU.
Yeah.
And as fun as that is, as great as the MCU Iron Man is, I like the different renditions of Iron Man that was in the comics. The differences to make him unique.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the case anymore. So if you permanently killed him off, again, he has such a cool rogues gallery around him that you can still base that off of. If
Iron Man has a rogues gallery?
I'm sorry, not rogues gallery.
Like Whiplash?
I mean, yeah.
Crimson Dynamo?
I still think these are people that you could bring out.
I think what Iron Man needs is arguably more than Peter or Bruce needed. What I think Tony needs is a big, in his words, 100-point restoration, like full character remodel.
Okay.
And I don't mean just a new armor suit. I mean a new mission statement for the Iron Man book, a new sort of ethos for Tony to adopt. Because the idea of sort of the billionaire playboy who builds stuff and is kind of keeping secrets and kind of shitty to some people, but also doesn't have the bottle anymore, sort of a thing, doesn't have the arc reactor anymore, kind of a thing. It's worn itself down pretty far.
Yeah.
And I want to see, when you were talking about the Batman thing, an idea entered in my mind, and I think it's ironically actually better with Tony. I thought it'd be fun if Bruce retired as Batman, but stayed Bruce.
Okay.
So he was still in control of money, still in control of Wayne Enterprises, whatever it's called, and was now bankrolling essentially the Outsiders or his Bat family type
Batman
characters.
Incorporated, but just
exactly. But he's now and he can be in politics, he can be in defense, he can be in industry, whatever. But he's actively not Batman anymore.
Sure.
And he can be a cover for them in the light while they operate in the dark. That was my original pitch, but I think it'd be almost more interesting to do that with kind of Iron Man, with an Iron Legion kind of take or something,
right? Where
Tony's not Iron Man anymore, because they've done some pseudo moves with him in the past to see if they could sort of give him a change. There was the Supreme Iron Man thing where he went very dark for a while.
Yeah.
There was the point where he had amnesia because his brain engram got sort of backed up somewhere, but his body got regenerated. There was the point where he was paralyzed for a while. I don't know if you remember that in the late 90s. He got his back broken, so he was paralyzed, and the suit had an AI in it, and for a while was doing stuff independent of him, and he had to fight his own suit, and it was very stupid. And then there was a point where they intimated, and I think it might still be true. I don't remember if they retconned it out now or not, where Tony isn't actually the son of the Starks. He's like a different kid that they adopted, and their real son is Arno Stark.
Okay.
Who has like a degenerative disease and is like laying in some bed somewhere or whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah, they've done some stuff to the character. I just don't think any of that was very interesting or very like evocative of like a real cool shakeup of a character that allows them to remain at their core who they are, but at the same time can adopt sort of like a new status quo or like hit a new plateau of interesting things.
I'm honestly like hearing you talk about Iron Man and us talking about like the legacy of where he has come. I'd love to change my answer.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. And I would just go the whole Justice League as the
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, so fortunately DC handled that for you. Justice League is gone.
No, they're not. No, they're not. They're coming back.
The characters is still there.
Whatever. So like the reason I think that is because like I just thought of Jay Garrett. Like the original Flash,
right?
The original Flash.
Yeah. Justice Society. Yeah.
He's pretty retired. The
Justice Society characters were aged pretty dramatically, so they could be sort of like the retired old veteran types.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we already have that. Why don't we just do that with these characters who kind of feel played out? Like if we're gonna do a clean sweep, kill off the DCU. Like you're just gonna do a clean thing with the Justice League. So, like, even if they kill off the DC universe in the comics and say the death of the Justice League.
Right.
I mean, I don't believe it. I don't think you believe it.
No, it's not going to be something that lasts. Justice League books sell too well.
Which sucks, because that would be such a cool comic to read if that actually happened and it actually had stakes. Whether they died of, like, honorable, it was really heroic how they died, or it was a tragic kind of death.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it should stick and it should, like, keep with us and then move forward.
More often than not, when the Justice League dies, usually they do so in a miniseries within their own book, and you find out at the end how they come back to life or something. There was this thing that happened in the 90s called Obsidian Age, where the Justice League gets time transported to, like, I think it's the past, it might be the future, I don't remember. And they get taken out by, like, the sort of heroes of that era.
Yeah.
And they all die pretty horrific deaths or whatever. But, like, through time displacement, they're able to sort of rectify that issue and come back to life. And that wasn't like a big thing where they said, oh, they're all dead. Justice League is canceled. 6 months later, the story picks up with them like having been figments in other people's books and suddenly coming back to life, or even 2 years later or whatever. It was like within 6 months, the story was over because it was, monthly and then it was done.
Yeah.
And so you really didn't feel like the death had any meaning. It was just sort of like cliffhangery theatrics for one book to the next.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff is only ever going to hit with people who are actively reading the book. It's never going to translate with ripples beyond that.
Long term.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I really feel like we're kind of getting to this point where we might have to pull a trigger of killing off a Justice League or Avengers type issue. And I'm not saying killing off. That sounds so brutal, but like retiring.
Yeah.
Like just like putting up the mantle, putting up the cape. And I think the reason for that is because Teen Titans, Young Justice, these younger superheroes like Miles Morales, Spider-Gwen, like they're all getting a lot of praise and light right now because I think like they are popular and cool characters that could take on that heavy responsibility if they gave them the opportunity.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what's your list? What do you got?
So I'm just going to pick one of each camp so we can have that discussion point and then wrap this up.
Okay.
On Marvel's side, the character that I want to see like either hand off or die or retire or whatever so that the storytelling change can happen on a pretty dramatic degree is I think what I want to have happen is like on the X-Men, I want Professor Xavier to be like not step down, not like sort of be disappeared. I want him toast.
Yeah.
Like I want him gone. The reason why is
like
Professor Xavier has
X-Men Last Stand style.
Well, I guess. But like Professor Xavier has sort of flirted with being gone from the comics at different points in time, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It kind of depends. Like the Phoenix Five, specifically Cyclops, killed him at the end of Avengers versus X-Men, and he was dead for a little while, and then Secret Wars changed all that. And then there was some times in the 90s where he was sort of like in and out, like he was sort of not around on Muir Island for a while or as an extra character in this book or whatever, but not really featuring prominently in the X-Men.
Yeah.
But he's always kind of been around, or his mission statement's always kind of been around. I want the X-Men to have like a really serious run at trying to be X-Men without Xavier. Not that I don't like Xavier or I don't like his mission statement, but I want them to try and really inherit. Specifically, I want the Children of the Atom, Cyclops, Beast, Iceman, Marvel Girl, and Angel, to like become the new leadership of the X-Men and like say, okay, here was Xavier's message, and here's our new version of that, which based on what we want to.
Isn't that the goal of Xavier's thing in the first place?
Yeah,
like that is the goal for him to teach. Like it's a school. It's to pass down this knowledge and for them to grow up with it and then do what they have.
It'd be cool if Xavier went out as like a martyr, like destroying Shadow King utterly or something, and he was destroyed as well or something like that.
I mean, definitely a cool epic way of some sort.
So they're honoring his legacy as opposed to Cyclops feeling the guilt of while Phoenix possessed killing him, or him just sort of fading into obscurity as a character, or there being a big mystery of what happened to him or whatever. Yeah. Like let him have a sacrificial moment, like a big martyr thing, and then let the Children of the Atom come together and say, "Yo, we have to inherit the legacy of Xavier for real. Right. Let's see what we can do with this and try the new vision of the X-Men, and not just one guy, not Magneto coming in saying I have Xavier's dead, but I'm still here and I have a different idea for stuff."
And that's kind of what I was thinking too. If you kill off Xavier, they're kind of a dynamic duo of you might have to kill off Magneto.
Yeah, frankly, I want Magneto to be the leader of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants again and be a bad guy if I had my druthers, but that's a whole other point. Okay. So I want Xavier. I want Xavier gone because I want the X-Men to be able to
live on their own,
blossom into their own.
Yeah.
But not using Xavier as an ethos, but as on their own way of doing things.
Yeah, I totally get it.
So on DC, the character that I want to go on DC, that's a harder decision because a lot of the characters in DC have flirted with this before. Mm-hmm. Like I'm talking major characters. Hal Jordan's died. Yeah. Barry Allen's died. Superman's died. Batman's died. Wonder Woman's died. Kind of.
Oh yeah.
And then some of the second stringers on the team like Cyborg or other characters have Aquaman. So I don't know, like picking one of them is sort of interesting or whatever. What I want to have happen is an inverse of what you described. What I want to have happen is everyone but the Justice League dies.
Oh, see, that'd be cool too.
All the other superheroes on Earth at the same time either vanish or die or like are frozen or something like that. Okay. And literally we have just the core seven. I'm talking the Magnificent Seven Justice League, the heavy hitters from the Grant Morrison run. Okay. Like we're talking Rock of Ages, that kind of stuff. And it's 7 members of the Justice League to save the entire planet. When all the heroes' rogues galleries are still active, all the Flash bad guys are still active, all the Batman bad guys are still active, but also all of Robin's bad guys are still active. All of Nightwing's bad guys are still active. All of Cyborg's, all the Doom Patrol's bad guys, all the Outsiders' bad guys, all the Teen Titans' bad guys. So they have to go and fight people they're not familiar with. They have to go and save people they don't know. They have to go to areas where, and like, that would be an issue. I think that would be very serious, kind of fun storyline. Okay. Now you'd cancel a ton of other books.
Okay. Yeah. I'm about to say, like, I'm trying to think about this, like, market wise too. Break this down for me. Is this a 6-month event? Is this a 2-year event? Is this a long-term? We're not going to see a Nightwing
realistically,
book.
It'd be an Elseworlds thing, and they wouldn't actually cancel any books because obviously they're not going to want to lose the financials. But it would be fascinating because it would be a really good opportunity rather than what DC does more often than not, which is, let's do Rebirth, where all of our books have this sort of ending, and then 30 days later, we launch everything over again by turning the light switch back on. Yeah. It'd be a thing where they go, no, everybody's canceled. We're all canceled for like 9 months. Yeah. There's no information about what's happening with these characters. All you get is like basically every week another a Justice League book comes out, as opposed to like every month or whatever, or every 2 weeks, because now they have all their teams able to do this one thing, and they're all prepping for the new launch of DC, which comes a year after everyone but the Justice League dies. Okay. And during that time, so there was this, when they were after Infinite Crisis, which took place gosh, a long time ago, like 15, 16 years ago now,
Yeah.
which led out of Identity Crisis, where Jean Loring killed Sue Dibney on accident.
This is all you. Okay.
Yeah. There was this book that came out every single week called Countdown.
Okay.
And Countdown led into New 52, which was the much maligned rebranding of Marvel of DC that some people liked, many people didn't like. Because
I freaking love New 52. All right.
The characters were very different, and so that was hard to deal with. But in any case, during Countdown, there was several different stories that were threading together. But it felt like you were really there for an event that was transpiring over an organic period of time.
Yeah.
And that was a fascinating story development. Now, they didn't cancel any other books, and everyone else was still doing shit at the same time. So Countdown was sort of relegated to this, like, but also this is happening too.
Sure.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And what I would want is for just 1 year, and there was no way they'd go for it, but for just 1 year to go, this is all you get. You're getting drip-fed storylines, very, very specifically manufactured.
Yeah.
With very, very specific concepts and foreshadowing. And then at the end of it, we're just going to have this DC Big Bang, and a whole bunch of characters are going to come out of it. And some of them are going to be what you know. Some of them are going to be something different. But it's all going to have been very specifically set up.
Mm-hmm.
Based on this, everyone disappears. Justice League have 1 year of hell.
Yeah.
Trying to like save everybody.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they all come back. And it's like, oh shit, what's this new status quo kind of a thing?
Okay.
That's what I would want to do on the DC side.
I think that'd be fun. I think it would be like, it sounds like an Elseworlds. It sounds like a good Elseworlds.
It does, yeah.
I don't know. I think
a Kingdom Come kind of a thing. Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah. It's just, I don't know. I think like Marvel and DC just bank so much on Elseworlds or What If, just because they just don't ever want to shake up that snow globe at all, which I think in the long term it's going to affect them.
Otherwise, if I had to pick one character, I'd kill Nightwing.
That hurts. All right.
Because I love Nightwing.
I love Nightwing too.
I love him, but because I love him, I think his death would actually have very serious repercussions.
If they kept it, but for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
we could see how Bruce deals with the death of his first son.
Yeah.
We could see how the Teen Titans deal with the death of their leader. We could see how the world deals with the death of a very public, very superheroic figure that is sort of like the first major legacy character, with the exception arguably of maybe Kid Flash and stuff like that.
Sure.
And we could see how sort of like it wouldn't have Superman's death kind of levels, but it would still be a pretty major death.
it would be a major death. Isn't Nightwing like currently like the head honcho with DC right now?
I don't know.
Okay.
I know after
I thought he's been getting bigger in the ranks, whether it's superpowers or something like that.
Some kind of dark event where Deathstroke was given powers by the dark multiverse and tried to like fuck over everybody on the prime continuity to stop the multiverse from like becoming the multiverse again.
Of course he would. Yeah.
The multiverse of multiverses, something like DC is way into their weird cosmology. In any case, he was stopped from his final plan, Deathstroke was, by Dick taking the dark power from him.
Okay.
And then Dick was like in his mind, because he's sort of a son of Batman and he's, very, very good at, being in the dark and living in that kind of a place because of who they are. He was like, I can rationalize this.
Sure.
And I can make this work. And then he became superpowered for a little while.
Okay,
and then I don't think he is anymore. I think the powers were like only for a while and then they sort of burned out or whatever.
Okay.
But because the Justice League is now gone in the wake of that event, the Titans, I think, are now the main team, and he's the leader of that team.
So that's kind of like what I was going on about killing the Justice League, but like actually making it permanent, or at least making it like profound, because I'm sure, however, the Justice League did get taken out. It was more just like, oh, they're dead now. Yeah. Not like, okay, Diana went back to her people. Barry married Iris, had a kid, and just kind of retired.
Right.
Batman just died. Just car crash, dead.
Yeah. And I like it that no one knows what happened to Batman.
That'd actually be really cool.
Because how would you know?
That'd be cool if like Superman just flew off, just left or something. I don't know, or just
somebody said, "Help on another planet. I'll see you guys later,"
or
and then never returns.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. More just like concrete. Hey, here's a good like end point for this person, whether it's good or bad, and then let's continue with these really cool characters that we've set up for years now, like Nightwing, who's a fan favorite at this point.
Yeah,
who would destroy both of us if he died.
It would destroy me.
Yeah, so I don't know. I guess like all of this is just saying that I think they need to start really taking more risks.
Yeah, well, if they want to set up characters to be able to take risks with other properties in the future, they've got to do that too. Like, 'cause once you do enough Iron Man movies or enough Captain America movies, at least Marvel has a lot of other properties they can go to, and DC is kind of shaking the snow globe.
Yeah,
to let them do the same thing over again. But there's been a lot of Superman movies and a lot of Batman movies, and now a fair number of Wonder Woman movies.
Yeah,
and they've got a lot of characters in their arsenal to make movies out of. And if they keep going back to the well every few years, we're gonna be like, I don't want any more Batman movies, guys. I don't want any more Superman movies.
I mean, that's what
we're
doing.
Give me something else.
We're getting Superman Legacy. We're getting Batman Brave and Bold. We're getting the Diana Island movie.
Oh yeah, the Themyscira movie.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. So I mean, they're going back to the well again.
Back to the well,
which I mean, I get like they're really trying to do it this time. I guess.
Yeah.
Sure.
Fingers crossed.
I guess. But do you got one more? Do you want to?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I think we should play our oft-fabled game, Agree to Disagree.
Oh, everyone's favorite.
I think we're on the precipice of that right now.
Yeah.
Because we shared some ideas that were good and bad. So let's really sink our teeth into this.
Okay. Yeah, go first.
Go first. Okay. So point number 1: agree or disagree. Batman is best when he is a detective, not anything else. Not a ninja. Not a superhero, not a kung fu fighter, not a gadgeteer, not even a father. He is at his best. Most fun to read, most interesting when he is a detective.
Hard agree.
Wow. Okay.
And the reason is because I'm thinking of every adaptation of Batman, and every single one, he is detective first, and then he's badass everything else.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the goal. I don't know that translates well in all the things that he's been made into.
I'm thinking Batman Arkham Asylum. I'm thinking Batman the Animated Series. I'm thinking Batman 1989.
I think Batman 1989 gets a pass on that one.
I'm thinking The Batman. And I'm thinking...
Oh, the most recent one?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I'm thinking The Dark Knight. He's a very big detective in that one. He's not really... brutal.
I'll give you Dark Knight, but
really?
I will not give you Batman Begins or Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah,
in both those movies, I would not qualify him as a detective.
I wouldn't either in those two either. I would say The Dark Knight though, because Batman Begins, he's beginning. Dark Knight Rises, he's trying to find himself.
I would agree. In Dark Knight, he's attempting to become.
Dude, he's trying to find the Joker the entire time.
He's trying to find the Joker the entire film. Now, I do think in Dark Knight he is an incompetent detective. But I do think he's a detective. Oh, I just saw a vein on your neck bulge out. All right, your turn.
Okay, I think first off, we're going to have a podcast the Dark Knight trilogy.
Table it.
All right, table it. My first one. DC has better animated movies than live action. Agree or disagree?
Agree. I don't even know that I should have thought about it that hard, but I was really trying in my mind to give a chance to... Because there's been some pretty spectacular DC live action movies. I think The Batman is pretty good. I think the first Aquaman is pretty okay. I think the first Shazam is pretty okay. They're not great, but they're pretty okay. You know, we talked about some other Batman movies that are pretty good. The first Superman movie is pretty good. But like, there's some exceptional animated DC movies.
Boy, you didn't mention the Dark Knight trilogy in that sentence at all.
Oh, I didn't. No. Yeah, I did not. It's funny.
It's not.
I mean, it's laughable.
That's what it is. All right. I'm sorry. Continue.
Okay. So my next point is Star Trek is better than Star Wars.
Get out of here.
Oh, what?
Disagree.
Okay. So here's my reasoning.
Sure.
Star Wars represents a dystopia.
Okay.
A world arrayed against the people in it.
Mm-hmm.
And usually that kind of thing comes from a failure of ethics or a failure of ethos, which is fine. That's a storytelling angle they want to go for.
Sure.
Everything is broken, lived in, hard. There's been wars, that kind of stuff. And the storytelling in Star Wars is fun. I like the characters in Star Wars, but I like Star Trek's utopia, where everything is attempting to do something for enlightenment, to better oneself, to accomplish a goal communally. I just kind of vibe with that storytelling concept.
For sure.
So
I think... Okay, to quote you told me that the coolest fictional thing that's ever come out was the lightsaber.
That's correct. I stand by that.
And I think
it's cooler than phasers for sure.
And I think that's a point that gives to Star Wars is the creativeness of it, of like the world itself. I think Darth Vader's helmet, the stormtroopers, the Force, lightsabers, like all these things are why Star Wars is so cool.
Yeah, but that's like saying that something is cool because it has action figures.
Sure.
I don't know that that's enough for me.
No.
I think that the lightsaber is awesome, but like I can appreciate a classic muscle car, but I don't like cars that much.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Then I can go further that I also think it has a linear storytelling.
That's fair.
And it has one linear storytelling.
Yeah, but that also can be a point against it. Like everything seems to revolve around the same 7 people.
Sure, it does. It's just like the story itself, if you look at it from a scope, it's a pretty good story.
That's true.
Told more or less.
Yeah, I'm not saying the difference is like magnificent between the two.
Okay.
But for me, I like the optimistic approach that Star Trek tells. At least good Trek.
I respect that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, when Trek does it right, they do it great.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
My next one, the 2003 TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, is the best TMNT show.
You're such a baby.
I am a baby, but I'm so right.
You're such a baby. The 2003 animated TMNT is very good.
Do you think it's
like best? It's very good. It lasted fucking 7 years or 8 years, whatever it is. Like it's very good. There will always be a soft spot in my heart for the original animated series.
Interesting.
Which I was very, very small when it came out, but I do remember the toys. I do remember the cartoon, which I mostly watched as reruns. But whatever.
Sure.
That show was definitely indicative of its time, and the age range they were making that stuff for, 6 to 12-year-olds or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. Best is a strong term. I haven't seen, I don't have a deep knowledge of the 2012 series or even the 2023 series.
Okay.
I think I've seen some of the episodes of them.
Sure.
And I hear that they're all good for different reasons.
They actually are, yeah.
So I don't know. I don't want to abstain. I'm gonna disagree only because of a lack of information.
Okay.
I can't just go there with you without having watched them.
I would probably have to disagree with my statement too.
Really? You just gonna say it and
disagree
with it?
Well, because it's my favorite. I don't think it's the best.
Okay.
It's my favorite for sure. But yeah, I actually think the 2012 is probably the best.
Really?
Because they pull some.
Now this is the one that has sort of like that
CG.
CG. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, so like animation wise, I'd say 2003 holds it.
They look super heroic in that one.
They look great.
Like their eyes have no pupils. They've got a lot of that sort of ninja vibe.
Shredder looks awesome.
Yeah.
So I think like look wise, I think 2003 nailed it. But like storytelling wise, I really think the 2012 was really good, really mature for what they're trying to do. Yeah. I didn't think you see that one. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
What you got next?
I see we're throwing curveballs here.
Yeah, trying to.
All right. So my number 3 is this is a little bit wide and open ended, but this is one that I do feel quite strongly about.
Okay.
Vampires are better than werewolves. In every depiction, in any movie or comic book or TV show, it matters not from what source material it comes from. Pick any example of them existing in the same thing. The vampire is far and away the cooler character.
I mean, I don't know. I would like to think I'd have to disagree, but I don't know if I have like that much. I guess like I'm trying to think of werewolf things.
I'll put my tent pole even over here. I'll put my flag like this. In Twilight, vampires are better than werewolves.
Okay.
In Being Human, vampires better than werewolves.
Okay.
In any fiction.
I'm trying to think of just like where vampires and werewolves have been in the same room, because they haven't been in Harry Potter. Because I was thinking that
vampires in Harry Potter cooler than werewolves.
There's no vampires in Harry Potter.
Well, whatever.
That's what I'm trying to think, though.
Voldemort's weird backhead thing is cooler than Remus Lupin.
You could probably say he was a vampire for
a bit.
He
just sucked unicorn blood.
Yeah, it's close.
Maybe you don't have a strong opinion. I do. Vampires are way cooler than werewolves. Werewolves are stupid.
I would have to disagree on that, because like I really like the ticking time clock of werewolves. And like once that hits,
it's a guy that's a weird monster once a month,
but it's like uncontrollable weird monster versus vampire who's like always.
So is the Hulk and Dr. Jekyll. They're way better versions of that.
I mean, there are, but if you tell it, like I think Werewolf by Night was phenomenal.
Yeah, and
I think it was a really interesting story, and they did the ticking clock so good.
Was there a vampire in that?
I don't think so.
It would be way cooler.
I don't.
Would have been a cool character.
Is there a vampire in Marvel?
Dracula's in Marvel. Blade is a half vampire.
Oh yeah, I guess we probably would get into that with Blade. Yeah.
Blade is cooler even as a half vampire than Werewolf by Night is.
Okay.
Just saying.
I guess I'll agree with you on that one.
All right. Maybe that wasn't the best one.
No, that's good. That's good. My last one is the MCU should do a hard reboot.
Strong agree.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Strong agree.
I think I'd probably agree at this point.
End of Secret. I think at the end of Secret Wars is the perfect time to just say, fade to white. Everything you know is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is different now. You wake up in the last 2 minutes of that movie. You wake after the flash to white or whatever. You hear an alarm going off, and you wake up to a new guy waking up in bed or whatever, and it's like a new Tony Stark or like a new Captain America or whatever.
Ending was written by a college screenwriter.
I don't know. I'm just
I see I know. I totally get it.
That you got to really not leave people with this expectation of, did they? Is it real? Like, what actually happened or whatever?
Is George Clooney Batman right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, don't do that. Don't have Tony Stark walk in the room as RDJ and go, that's kind of weird. And then just sort of leave it like that. There should be no illusions, no disenfranchised, fans going, well, they didn't really change it. They only kind of changed it or whatever. Like, name the new people almost instantly.
Yeah.
Like, that's the new Steve. That's the new Bruce. That's the new, whatever.
And I think, like, the reason for that, because I actually agree with you, too, is because, like, we're getting so far in the weeds of Marvel of, like, what year are we currently in? Like, are we in 2023 in Marvel?
Last I heard, we're in 2023, 2024, around that time.
So they have been just all these projects have been happening within the same year to get us from the time skip.
I think Falcon and Winter Soldier is 2025 though, but I might be wrong.
Well, I think this is helping my point of like we're in the weeds. Like we can't even say
it's hard
like
to keep track.
Indicative.
Yeah.
So like it's just gonna get further and further. Yeah. And to say like when the MCU started, they didn't have all their heavy hitters. They didn't know what they're wanting to do. They didn't have Spider-Man to be set up perfectly for Civil War.
Yeah.
For where Spider-Man was in that movie, it worked.
Yeah.
It could have been way better.
It could have been way better. Yeah, for sure.
For sure. And even with the X-Men, again, they're like Marvel has been playing with their toys with one arm behind their back the entire time.
Yeah.
They've been nailing it. So now that they have the X-Men, now that they have the Hulk, I think, now that they have the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man for the most part, they can do like a solid like MCU of whatever they want to actually do.
But if they do that, if at the end of 2025, 2026, whatever the year it is when all this stuff comes to a head, if they're going to rebuild everything from the same pool of toys.
Ground up.
From the ground up. They've really got to nail it this time.
And
no meandering around, no wasting time.
No Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
No Ryan Reynolds.
Yep.
No, like, bringing back, like, RDJ or Chris Evans. Like, it's cool to have these things. I love seeing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. But, like, if we want to...
The Band-Aid's got to come off. It's got to be all new stuff.
And if it is multiverse, I mean, we're already in it right now. We can't...
Sure. That's this saga.
When
they do the next one,
probably no
post Phase 6, saga stuff is fine. Multiverse stuff, retire it. Just like the Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
Like, retire that shit.
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing about Marvel now is they have set up these legacy characters of what we know. Of like, this was Steve Rogers. This was Tony Stark. Here's our reboot. Here's a little tweak of it. Yeah. Like, you know them. Here's our tweak. Here's to keep it fresh. And you can do that.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to feel a little bit more fresh, which is probably like we're thinking of the mainstream of like comics of like how they kind of continue to do this. And now movies are going to do that too.
But
maybe.
If they do it well, then 20 years will have passed, arguably, between the original Iron Man and when they end Secret Wars.
Yeah.
That's 2 full sagas of 3 phases each with characters that have aged 20 years in real life. Actors in that time. It's appropriate to do a major shift because a new generation of fans will be accepting these characters, and they may not want to watch through 50 movies to see where they are at this point. Yeah. And they may want to, because the movies are going to be an artifact of time that will last forever. It's like people going back to watch the original Godzillas, the original Back to the Futures or whatever. They're still good movies, and they still exist. They don't need to constantly be added onto all the time. Mm-hmm. Cough, Indiana Jones. And so if they redo this, and instead Phase 7 or Saga 3 or whatever should be a whole new landscape.
Yeah, because Marvel already is such a pill to swallow from whatever the TV shows, like even like the obscure TV shows like Daredevil and like Luke Cage and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Some of those do and are starting to tie back into these. So you might have to add those to the list. So yeah, I think a hard reset.
I still wouldn't, but I understand your point.
Yeah. All right.
I agree. Yeah, hard agree on that one. Okay. Interesting takes on some of this stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I liked yours. Those were interesting.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's take out some trash.
Yeah, that's it.
Time to take out the trash.
Okay.
First up is something I know you're going to have some words about, which is Rachel Zegler in Snow White.
So Rachel Zegler, I don't think is a household name yet.
I wouldn't think so.
So she was in West Side Story with Steven Spielberg that got nominated. She was recently in the almost nominated Shazam 2.
I know. It's phenomenal film.
Oh, my gosh.
Absolutely. Should have won the Oscar.
Best actress.
Best actress.
We'll see. Also, big fan of the show. I didn't even mention.
All the Shazam family are big fans of the show.
So she got cast as Snow White.
Okay.
And the thing with her is apparently she was talking crap on Snow White and saying like, hey, this movie's actually not great as far as like characters go, as far as like, as you know, as far as this, 1930s movie is.
Sure. Yeah.
And she got a lot of rap for it. She was like, hey, you shouldn't be cast as this person in the first place, or you don't even like care about this character. Like you're not giving this lineage like the correct like respect that it deserves.
Right.
And I completely agree with her. Snow White is trash. It is one of the worst Disney movies. And if anyone disagrees, go watch that movie again. Like, actually go watch it. It's not good.
Sometimes things have a level of fandom or have been sort of propped up on a pedestal simply because of fond recollection.
Sure.
The age from which it comes is now far removed from where we are. And if you really scrutinize the details of that thing, you're like, wow, why do people love this so much?
Yeah.
It's been like, 90 years since it came out. Why do we like it now the way we liked it then? Because then we had nothing else to compare it to.
Yeah.
Or the things that we did compare it to, it still was of a high quality comparison wise. But now we
have 10 Snow White movies.
Yeah, this isn't that good, guys. Also, it's weird looking and it's creepy.
It is. It's
got a lot of stuff in it that we're kind of not okay with anymore.
It's called Snow White, but it's about the dwarves. Snow White's not really in it. Yeah. She is, but not really.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of a bummer she's getting that much rap. I mean, it's tough when, you get cast as a character and be like, yeah, this character's not great.
Is this the same movie? Is this the same Snow White movie where, and I could be miswiring my brain here, that hired non-short people to be the dwarves in it?
I need to clarify. I'm not pro this movie. I'm just saying.
I'm just wondering.
You are correct.
I am correct. Okay.
You are correct because I don't think they're even going to call them dwarves because I think that was problematic as a term.
Sure. Whatever they are, like I want to see Warwick Davis. I want to see, people. They're for 90 years, ever since Hans Christian Andersen or the Brothers Grimm or whomever wrote this original story, these characters have been perfect for a select group of people that don't get a lot of representation to be able to play and knock it out of the park playing it. And now here we are 90 years later from the Disney movie anyway, and we're going to make another version of this film, and we're going to take the iconic Seven Dwarf roles. Whether or not we should call them that anymore, I don't know what to call them more appropriately.
Sure.
And we're going to say, not only are we going to recast these
Seven Dwarves,
we're going to recast them as non-dwarves.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why you'd call it Snow White. I mean, I truly understand shaking up the snow globe to try to make these movies feel different.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing The Lion King and all these movies that are just like straight up riff-offs from your original movie.
Sure.
So I appreciate they're trying to do that with Snow White. I just don't think they're doing it with the intentions of like trying to shake up the snow globe. I think they're just trying to appease audiences.
Well, they're also going to probably stunt cast a bunch of these dwarves and make them into like character actors, or, if we're going to see Chris Pratt as one of the dwarves or whatever, that's a waste of time. That's a waste of opportunity.
Sure.
Give it to a real actor who needs representation.
Yeah. I don't know. Personally, again, I'd bank on. I don't think this movie should be made in the first place.
Agreed.
This is going to be a $200 million budget that's could have gone to 10 smaller budget movies that one of them could have been a hit.
Yeah. Disney could have made up all kinds of other stuff besides making this.
Yeah.
Especially considering a lot of their other live action films are mediocre.
But speaking of not making things, turns out they're not making a Wonder Woman 3.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
Gal Gadot
which is news to her.
Yeah, Gal Gadot said, "Oh, it's a sure thing. We're making more Wonder Woman movies." I'm not even sure if Patty Jenkins has tuned into this or said anything about it.
I doubt it.
But Gal was like, "Yo, we're making another movie," and then lo and behold, down from his writing loft at the top of the DC tower comes James Gunn going, I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't know. And I don't blame Gal Gadot. I mean, maybe a little. Maybe she's trying to promote a little bit of like, maybe we can get back that Wonder Woman.
Groundswell of support kind of thing.
I could see it to where James Gunn was like, hey, so we're going to be rebooting stuff, but we're not, like, we love you as Wonder Woman. We'd love to bring you back as Wonder Woman.
I wouldn't.
Elseworlds, I mean, sure. But, like, Elseworlds, or even as, like...
multiverse stuff, yeah.
Or even, like, a producer credit of, like, hey, come work on the new Wonder Woman movie.
Sure.
You know the character to a degree. You worked with her for a while now.
You did one good one and one mediocre one, so you might as well come in and offer your insight.
Well, cameo to other things. Be like, hey, this is how you cameo. You just smile and wave.
Yeah.
So...
You just hear walking around a green screen every so often.
Play that theme as you're walking in.
Yeah.
So... I could see that conversation being that. So I could see her getting that thought in her head. I just wouldn't say it out loud.
Plus, a hard no in Hollywood is a rare thing.
Yeah.
People leave you thinking certain things very, very specifically because they want you to be able to be let down easy and things just kind of go. People would rather things go into development hell than say, no.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. That's a stupid idea, and we're not having it.
No, we'll always leave that door a little open
exactly.
just in case.
Yeah.
And
hard-nosed burn bridges, but soft, sort of like, well, we'll see if we can move some money around, or we'll come back to this conversation, or whatever it is.
Which
way easier to do.
Which makes the whole ecosystem a little shaky, which, hey, this is where we're living now.
House of Cards.
So, yeah, so that's a unique one.
Man. Cool.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Trash taken out.
Is taken out.
That's going to be the end of it's going to be the end of this one.
That's it.
That's it. That's all she wrote, folks.
Well, that's it. No more. Don't keep
watching.
watching. We're done.
All right. See you later.
Okay.